In Peru, police forces repressed demonstrators that paid tribute to the victims of the Juliaca massacre, leaving at least 23 people injured in southeastern region of Puno. Syria and Turkey continue to receive international solidarity to address the emergency after Monday's devastating earthquake, while the death toll now surpassed 22,700. China said that it will work with other members of the BRICS group to analyze and accelerate the admission of new members to the bloc. Hello, welcome to From the South. I'm Ana Marrero from the teleSUR headquarters in Caracas, Venezuela. We begin with the news. Stay with us. On Thursday in Peru, police forces repressed demonstrators that were paying tribute to the victims of the Juliaca massacre, leaving at least 23 people injured in the southeastern region of Puno. According to the Ombudsman's office, among the wounded is an 11-year-old girl who was shot in the leg. Although most of the repression took place around the Incam and Caucapat airport, the entire demonstration was beset by the police. The wounded are hospitalized in several health centers. A month ago, on January 9th, Peruvian security forces brutally repressed an anti-government protest in Juliaca, sitting in southern Peru's Puno region, killing at least 17 protesters and leaving at least 68 others seriously injured. And meanwhile, Peruvian demonstrators were also repressed in the southern city of Apurímac as a protest on Thursday night ended with at least 80 people arrested and 1 civilian killed. On Friday morning, authorities confirmed the death of Denilson Juliaca Vilches, age 23, as a result of Thursday police repression in which at least 3 others were impacted by bullets. The Human Rights Association denounced the use of excessive force by the police on the arrests. According to the organization, the National Police violently repressed those who were holding a peaceful protest in the Bolivar Square of Coalinca in the province of Aymares, where President Dina Boluarte is from. Of the 80 people arrested, at least 20 were the women from the town of Ichahuanca. They were linked without evidence to the burning of a bus. Meanwhile, the Peruvian Congress has decided to convict the former President Martín Vizcarra on corruption charges. The motion passed through afternoon with 102 votes in favor and 8 abstentions. Former President Martín Vizcarra and other former ministers, including María Antonieta Alba and María Inostroza, have been charged with collusion against the public administration for the crimes of omission, refusal, or delay of executing their functions. Vizcarra, Inostroza, and Alba are considered jointly responsible for not purchasing molecular tests to detect COVID-19 in the year 2020 and instead pointing for rapid tests, which led to the loss of life, violating the fundamental rights to life, physical, moral, and psychological integrity of the population. In Ecuador, a group of agents from the Public Prosecutor's Office on Friday raided the management and contract office of Petroecuador building as a part of an investigation for alleged crimes of corruption. According to the report, the prosecutor's office is gathering evidence related to the investigation for an alleged corruption crimes involving former and current public servants within the state-owned companies in what the Attorney General's office has called the Encuentro case. The raid of the offices took place after other operations by agents of the police and the prosecutor's office in the hands of Petroecuador's general manager Hugo Aguiar and Cesar Pazmiño, former management advisor of the company. Colombia's High Commissioner for Peace, Danilo Rueda, confirmed on Friday that a second cycle of talks between the Colombian government and the National Liberation Army will begin next Monday in Mexico. According to the information, the two issues to be discussed is this new phase are the ceasefire and the mechanisms for the participation of society in the construction of peace in Colombia. Interviewed by the Presidential Press Secretariat, Rueda emphasized that for the executive, the rights of the victims are not negotiable. And the United Nations Children's Fund were on Friday the act of armed violence triggering schools in Haiti, despite nine-fold in 1 year in the rising insecurity and widespread unrest. According to the UNICEF representative in Haiti, Bruno Maes, violence continued to take a heavy toll on children's lives in around Port-au-Prince, where schools no longer being spared. Meanwhile, the organization stated that in the first 6 days of February, escalating violence in urban areas triggered the closure of 30 schools, while more than 1/4 of education institutions remain shut since October. And let's take a very short break now, but remember you can now follow us on our TikTok account as well as in English, in which you will be able to see news in different formats, news updates, and more. Stay tuned for more news. Welcome back to From the South. Welcome back to From the South. Syria and Turkey continue to receive international solidarity to address the emergency after the devastating earthquake. The number of deaths in both countries has climbed to more than 22,900, according to the latest figures from authorities and rescue organizations. World Health Organization Director General Tedros Ghebreyesus said the organizations and expert teams and special flights with medical supplies to both nations. Meanwhile, rescue teams continue to search for thousands of people suspected of being trapped in rubble, but optimism is fading over freezing temperatures and the 72 hours deadlines that is considered crucial to save lives. A team of rescue workers from the Red Cross Society of China headed over the first batch of medical supplies to Syria upon their arrival in the quake-hit country. The Chinese team also met with a representative from the Syrian Red Crescent and explored the best search and rescue solutions. Like many rescue teams, the members of the Red Cross Society of China landed in Syria after a magnitude 7.8 earthquake hit southern Turkey on Monday, followed by another turmoil of a similar strength, which struck later in the day, while dozens of aftershock continues throughout the day. After the catastrophe, the RCC provided $200,000 in cash for the Turkish Red Crescents and the Syrian Red Crescents, respectively, of emergency humanitarian assistance. The first United Nations aid convoy for earthquake victims arrived on Friday at Bab al-Haba border crossing in northwestern Syria. The aid came as rescuers scores debris in a desperate search for survivors 4 days after the massive earthquake that hit Turkey and Syria, killing more than 22,700 people. but changes of finding survivors have did mean since the passing of the 3-day murder that experts consider a crucial period to save lives. Meanwhile, the United States Agency for International Development also sent an aid package to the affected areas. On Friday, the U.S. Treasury Office of Foreign Assets Control issues a license which authorized all transactions to Syria relating to the earthquake relief for the 180 days. The Treasury Department stressed in a release that U.S. sanctions in Syria will not stand in the way of life-saving efforts for the Syrian people. Earlier this week, the region was hit by a strong earthquake that killed more than 22,000 people and injured tens of thousands more. The latest development comes after the U.S. was widely criticized for not lifting the sanctions in the immediate wake of the devastating earthquake. For its part, the Syrian government stated on Friday that the decision issued by the U.S. on the partial and temporary freezing of some unilateral coercive measures imposed on the Arab country were the mixed little lies. According to the National Foreign Ministry, the U.S. decision copies other previous measures that only seeks to give a veiled humanitarian appearance by the stipulating exceptions for humanitarian purpose, but the fact prove otherwise. Damascus urged Washington to immediately unconditionally and without exception end its blockade and to desist from the hostile practices and violations of international law and the principles and purpose of the Charter of the United Nations. And in Brazil, preliminary satellite data released on Friday seems to indicate that the Amazon deforestation fell in January 2023 from the same month last year. Preliminary satellite data collected by the government's space research agency in the INPE shows 64 square miles cleared in the region, down 61% from January 2022 to the worst from the month in 8-year series. However, experts said it is too early to talk about a trend reversal. Still, in January, Brazilian environmental agents launched their first annual learning range under Lula, who has pledged to end surging environmental destruction and is also fighting wildcat mining on Yanomami in the Amazon, its largest indigenous reservation, in a humanitarian crisis, blaming on illegal gold miners. Belgian police has arrested Social Democrat European Parliament member Marc Tarabella as part of the investigation into an alleged corruption case involving Qatar, Morocco, and the European Parliament. Sources from the Belgian Federal Prosecutor's Office reported that they executed a right to inspect a safe belonging to the 59-year-old Marc Tarabella. The judge investigating the case will determine whether Tarabella must appear before him or not. Also, the European Parliament suspended parliamentary immunity of Italian Andrea Cozzolino at the request of the investigation. We have more news coming up after the final short break, so don't go away. Welcome back. On Friday, the Italian Prime Minister Giorgia Meloni criticizes the second time frames in the invitation of Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky on Wednesday to the Eagle Palace. Italian Prime Minister insists that the meeting of French President Emmanuel Macron and the German Chancellor Olaf Scholz with Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky a day before the summit of European Union leaders was a political blunder because, according to her, it could awaken the messages of European unity being sought by the Western Bloc. Meloni acknowledged that it is not easy to manage the Ukrainian issue with public opinion because what they do to support Ukraine might not be the best of terms of consensus, the Italian leader said. In the U.S., Republicans in Congress introduced a resolution seeking the whole U.S. aid to Ukraine, citing the massive cost to taxpayers, the risk of escalation with Moscow, and the toll on the country's own arsenal after some $3 billion in arms transfers. Led by Florida Representative Matt Gaetz, 11 Republicans put forth the Ukrainian Batik resolution, which stated Washington must end its military and financial aid to Kiev while urging all combatants to reach a peace agreement. In a press release announcing the resolution, Gaetz said the U.S. is in a period of managed decline and that problems will only get worse if the government continues to hemorrhage taxpayer dollars of the foreign conflict. U.S. Government Communications Director Kate Bedingfield will leave her post at the end of this month, an official statement announced on Friday. Bedingfield, who has served as assistant to President Joe Biden in his time as a vice president, will be replaced by Ben Lebel, a former press officer in the Barack Obama's administration. Regarding her resignation, Biden said in a statement that Kate has been a loyal and trusted advisor through thick and thin. Regarding the new director, he said he hopes to welcome him as a top-notch communicator. The White House has signed that Lebel will become the first openly gay person to hold the position of communications director. Former U.S. President Donald Trump is back on Facebook and on Instagram, the platform from which he was suspended from inciting violence. On Thursday, the conglomerate Meta, owner of those social networks, restricted his accounts in the virtual space. Earlier, Facebook communicated that it will return the official pages of the former president, but said that the process will take a few weeks to be able to install control on Trump's account that could result in being suspended again if it violates the group's rules. Let's remember that the former head of state was restricted from social networks in the wake of riots in January 6, 2021, when hundreds of his supporters stormed the federal capitol to stop the Confederation of Joe Biden's victory in November 2020 elections. China said on Friday that it will work with the other members of the BRICS groups to analyze and accelerate the admission of new members of the bloc. The Foreign Ministry said that the expansion process will be based on in-depth discussions and consensus building through consultations among the other members of the BRICS: Brazil, Russia, India, and South Africa. BRICS agreed on its 14th presidential summit to examine requests from countries willing to join its routers, and official resources said that at least 13 territories in the world want to take this step. A car ran into a Crown bus stop in East Jerusalem on Friday, killing 2 people and injuring 5 others. The accident took place in Ramat, a Jewish settlement in East Jerusalem. Police identified the 2 killed as a 6-year-old boy and a man in his 20s. Data and medics were treating 5 injured, including an 80-year-old child in critical conditions undergoing CPR. The president of Sierra Leone, Julius Maravio, during a press interview, stressed that education is a priority for his government. Maravio is running from re-elections in Surface to be held on June 24, 2023. Maravillo government has allocated 22% of the country's budget for this purpose. He added that they will have provide free access to school for all the children regardless of social class. He also argued that they are able to provide a solid education system to other people. Sierra Leone is one of the poorest countries in the world, still recovering from a civil war between 1981 and 2002 in the Ebola epidemic that ravaged West Africa between 2014 and 2016.
Because we are provided free access for every child to go to school, we do not want any child to fall along the way. And what we have done is to make sure that every child, whether pregnant or not, whether you are in the farthest of places, whether you are rich or poor, we are able to provide you with the service. Well, we have increased the pay and conditions of service for teachers. And there is more to come, but we have just spread it over a period of time. The teachers are much better today. We have increased the number of teachers, and we can only do as much as our budget can permit us to do.
And we have come to the end of this news brief, but you can find this and many other stories on our website at telesurenglish.net. You can also join us on our socials. We're on Facebook, Twitter, and on Instagram as well. For TeleSUR English, I'm from the South, Tamara Marrero, and thank you for watching.